The Chiefs are no longer undefeated, and the Panthers have not been defeated in 3 weeks. It's Panthers, it's Chiefs here on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Chiefs, a Locked On NFL crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On NFL crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers and Locked On Chiefs podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can get Panthers and Chiefs coverage every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching our shows here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today is Crossover Thursday, presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the app and use code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers. He is Chris Clark, one of the hosts of Locked On Chiefs. It's week 12. It's the Panthers versus the no longer undefeated Kansas City Chiefs. Have not seen this matchup since the 2020 season, and not a ton has changed for Kansas City since then, as they are still contending for Super Bowls, and not a lot has changed for the Carolina Panthers, as they still are very much not so competing for Super Bowls. But they do have positive momentum. They have not lost in 3 straight weeks. We're on a bye last week, one against the Giants in Munich, beat the Saints at home prior to that. So possibly, like that 2020 matchup, it'll be another competitive game between the Panthers and Chiefs. Chris, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Obviously, as you said, no longer undefeated, so a little bit of a change there, but hoping that Kansas City can start a new streak this week against the Panthers.
Yeah, it's funny. I asked you, how are you doing? I mean, when are Chiefs fans ever doing poorly this nowadays?
Well, to be fair, I mean, that was not a pretty game against the Bills. A lot of things went wrong and a lot of things that they need to work on, but hopefully they can figure it out and get right over the next couple of weeks. And honestly, I think you look at the season and how it's gone so far, they've been on the verge of losing multiple times. It's not like it's been blowouts every single week. So I do think that there's, something there as well.
Yeah, it's interesting watching from afar. This Chiefs team has not been nearly as dominant as you would expect for a team that was previously undefeated going into week 11. They only have a plus 49 point differential, and that's behind 5 teams right now in the AFC, including 2 of your division rivals, Denver and Los Angeles. And I don't think anyone would argue that the Broncos and Chargers are better teams than the Chiefs, but certainly Pittsburgh's played well. Buffalo, who beat you on Sunday, they've played well as well. And the Chiefs only ranked 10th in the NFL in point differential. So they have kind of been getting away with it, but still, when you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Andy Reid, you have that defense coached by Steve Spagnuolo, you're going to have a Super Bowl contending team. Looking at the Chiefs heading into this matchup in Charlotte at 1 o'clock Eastern time, what is the biggest story with the Chiefs offense?
Biggest story is that they could be getting back Isaiah Pacheco this week. I know Kareem Hunt has been a workhorse for this team. I know they've put a lot on him, and they've just fed him the ball over and over and over again. But with Isaiah Pacheco potentially coming back this week, it's not for sure that he will, but the thought is that he probably could. I think that's a huge storyline going into this game. And you talk about being undefeated at 9-0. Yeah, you're undefeated. You found ways to win. But the reality is that this team was never supposed to look like it is. You're missing Hollywood Brown. You're missing Rashee Rice. You've missed Juju Smith-Schuster, who wasn't supposed to be a big key into this offense going into the regular season, and all of a sudden becomes the number 1 wide receiver. Now you have DeAndre Hopkins. The offense has just had to completely change, and I think that is continually something that they've had to work on going forward.
I find it pretty interesting when you look at Kansas City and Buffalo, 2 contenders this season, where you look offensively, things haven't looked the way that you expected going into the year. Like Kansas City loses a ton of guys just to injury. I mean, Buffalo didn't have a ton of guys just because they let them walk out the door, but still both those teams are sitting right here at 9-2, 9-1, and in position to be some of the top seeds in the AFC. And the Pacheco news is huge. And I was looking at it, rushing success rate. When you look at backs with at least 125 attempts, Kareem Hunt's he's only 4th. He's not only, but he's 4th in the NFL. So he's been pretty solid. Would you expect there to be kind of a 2-headed monster in the backfield when Pacheco comes back, or is it going to be just Pacheco as that top back again, and they're riding him anytime to run to the football?
No, I do think it's going to be a 2-headed monster. I think that they could use both of those backs, and I think that the big thing is I think they want to work Pacheco in slowly. I don't expect Pacheco to get a ton of snaps this week. I think that he may start. he still could get, 15, 20 snaps. I just don't see it being a normal type of workload for him. I think it's going to be a split between him and Hunt. And the other side of it is Kareem Hunt has kind of been wearing down over the past couple of weeks because he's been getting used so much, and he is an older running back. So this actually works in both their favors to kind of give both of them a little bit of a breather headed towards the playoffs.
Yeah, and actually it's probably pretty smart looking just at this matchup. I mean, they're 10.5-point favorites on the road. You would expect there's going to be a ton of Chiefs fans in the stands here in Charlotte, as that's become the trend where the opposing team takes over. Unfortunately, maybe Panther fans are excited after winning 2 straight games. They'll get in there on Sunday and watch this game. But, yeah, I mean, when you have Houston coming up, you have Pittsburgh still, you have Denver, and you have L.A., this may be a game where you want to take things slow with Pacheco and maybe not throw him out there. So I'm curious to see how they deploy him on Sunday and how they deploy also Kareem Hunt. Looking defensively, that unit's been outstanding all year long. I know they couldn't get the stops they needed last week on the road against Buffalo. But, I mean, Tony Romo only says that Josh Allen's an alien, and he made an alien play there to win that game on that 4th down with that touchdown run. What's the biggest story going on with Steve Spagnuolo's defense heading to this game?
It's got to get pass rush. You look at the Chiefs defense, and that's the biggest thing that they're struggling with right now is outside of Chris Jones, they're just not getting pressure. And Chris Jones isn't getting pressure as much as you'd want him to, and it's because he doesn't have a lot of help. I mean, Karlaftis hasn't been the guy that you were wanting him to be this season. He's kind of taken a little bit of a step back, I would say. Tershawn Wharton started off the season hot and was able to get a ton of pressure early, but he's slowed down. And you don't have somebody on the other defensive end side right now, which they could have a guy in a mini who could play this weekend. He's coming off IR. He's in his practice window, just like Pacheco is right now. He's possible to be back this week, but I don't think he's not going to be the guy that he was last season because he's coming off an ACL injury. I don't think he's going to have the same explosion, but I think he can give them, pass rush snaps and give them some help there. So I think that's the big thing is they have to find a way to get pressure. Not sacking Josh Allen once in that game is a huge reason why they struggled so much on defense.
Yeah, and the Panthers spent a lot of money this offseason on Robert Hunt, on Damian Lewis, just reworking this offensive line so they wouldn't give up a ton of sacks. Last year, Bryce Young was sacked 62 times, which tied a franchise record that dates back to 2001 when Steve Berline was sacked that many times as well. And not all the sacks are on the offensive line, it's also on the quarterback. But this year, they've only given up 12 sacks, and that is certainly a progressive thing that we've seen. Yeah, especially when you look at the last couple of years where they've just not been great at all on the offensive line, and that's been one of the worst units in the NFL. They have improved to a much better unit, and that's going to be a big matchup on Sunday against that Chiefs defensive front and see if they can continue that as they have, of course, a tall task against Kansas City on Sunday. Just one last question, too, for the defense. When you look at it, because obviously it's going to be a playoff team, what is just the one area? Is it pass rush that you're concerned about the most, or is there another area that potentially holds back this team from being back in the AFC title game where it seems to be the Chiefs Invitational every year in the AFC?
I still think that they have a great chance of making the Super Bowl and being in the AFC Championship game. I don't think that that's going to change. Injuries have, hurt them a lot this season. Offensively, they lost 2 of their top wide receivers. Defensively, they've lost, they lost a top corner. Jalen Watson is gone for the year, and that's a huge loss. He was playing fantastic football, a little bit off the pace that Trent McDuffie was playing, and McDuffie's a fantastic player. So I think, when you look at the pass defense, I think that's a little bit of a problem. They have to get that figured out and squared away a little bit. But the bigger problem on my end is still the pass rush. If they can't get pressure, it's going to make those injuries and the struggling DBs be even more something that sticks out.
All right, pressure makes diamonds, and they put diamonds in Super Bowl rings. So Kansas City looking for another one of those this season as they come to town to face off against the Carolina Panthers, who have won 2 in a row and have not lost in 3 weeks. He's Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs. I'm Julian Council of Locked On Panthers. We'll look at the Panther side of things here in just a moment here on this Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday, presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500-plus airlines and 700,000-plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guys and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you join Built.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Join Built.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points for your rent payments today. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And speaking of bets, looking at this game on Sunday, the Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites on the road, -650 money line. The Panthers are +480. The over-under is set at 43.5 points as these two teams face off at Bank of America Stadium at 1 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday afternoon. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, and never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Chiefs is another crossover Thursday brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Julian Council, Chris Clark, talking about this matchup as Panthers host the Chiefs, no longer undefeated. The Panthers on a 2-game winning streak and hoping to make it 3 games and shock the NFL world. We'll see if that's possible. As I mentioned at the top of the show, last time they played, both teams are basically in the same situation. Kansas City was playing great. Carolina wasn't playing great. Now, Carolina had Christian McCaffrey back then and DJ Moore, and they don't have Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, and of course, Brian Burns as well, and Derek Brown's out for the season. So situations as well as far as personnel, not same in Carolina, but as far as just looking at the macro of it all, kind of similar, possibly with the momentum, they can shock the world on Sunday. I don't know how Chiefs fans are feeling about this game. I feel like they feel pretty confident now, Chris.
Yeah, I think that they feel confident, although I will say losing Buffalo and then playing the Raiders next week on a short week because they're playing on Black Friday, you hope that they don't overlook the Panthers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like half the time I come up here, even like when I talked to Q from the Raiders, he's like, this is the type of game the Raiders lose. And the Panthers went out there and just destroyed that team. It was garbage time by the end of the third quarter. I hear that a lot. They're like, don't overlook the Panthers. Don't overlook the Panthers. And then so far this season, not very many teams have overlooked the Panthers. Well, Carolina has played better, albeit against the Saints, who have fallen apart, and also the Giants, who aren't very good, and they finally benched Daniel Jones. But looking at the Panthers side of things offensively, as far as the biggest story, there's like 3 things looking at this game. Jonathon Brooks, he is going to make his debut. At least he's expected to make his debut. We thought that was going to happen a couple weeks ago in Munich against the Giants, but instead he did not make it. Gave him some more time. Dave Canales, the head coach in Carolina. Now the expectation is he'll be out there ready to go. Miles Sanders, he's out at least this week. He's evaluated week to week with an ankle injury that was suffered in that win against the Giants there in Munich. So we'll see what kind of impact Jonathon Brooks can make. He's likely going to probably just take over Miles Sanders' role, as Chuba Hubbard has been outstanding this season, but still second-round pick. You don't typically see teams go out there and spend too much on a running back. The Panthers, who had traded back in the second round, traded back up to get him at 46th overall, and he was the first running back off the board. So the expectation is him and Chuba Hubbard will be that 1A, 1B moving forward in Carolina. Bryce Young also getting another opportunity to start. Dave Canales did say, though, he's still taking this decision week to week. So if Bryce Young continues to play good football, and I think the last 2 games against the Saints and the Giants, even though look at the stats, not overwhelming, are the best 2 back-to-back performances he's had so far in his young career in the NFL. And Adam Thielen, he's also back. Last time we saw him was week 3, made an outstanding touchdown reception from Andy Dalton right before the half in that win against the Raiders. And he had not practiced in team period for 8 weeks until he did on Wednesday. So 2 guys returning, 1 really making his debut, 1 returning to Adam Thielen, and Bryce Young getting the ball once again. Those are really the top stories for the Panthers offense heading into this game on Sunday.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see Brooks. Fantastic player in college. I really want to see what he's able to do in the NFL. The one thing I will say is between Hubbard and Brooks, that's going to be an interesting 1-2 punch for the Panthers. But I will also say Kansas City's been very good against the run this year, and they have shut that down for the most part. They don't have a guy that they've allowed as a 100-yard rusher other than Lamar Jackson, and that one's a little bit of a different animal. I think you and I can both agree.
Yeah, Lamar's he's a different cat for sure. And like Chuba just got paid. heading into that game in Germany, where he was paid a 4-year, up to $37 million contract. Really, when you look at it, it's 2 years, $15 million, and he had his best game of his career against the Giants that Sunday. And rarely do you see a guy get paid and immediately have his best game. He's kept his head down. He's worked hard. He's earned that money as he bought into what Dave Canales is trying to build here in Carolina, and he's been outstanding this season. He's 4th in the NFL in rushing yards. He is 5th among running backs in rushing success rate with at least 125 attempts. Talked about Kareem Hunt earlier. He's 4th there. So both those guys have been excellent, but Chuba Hubbard has been outstanding for Carolina this season. Defensively, I really think the only story is they're getting healthier. They played better the last 2 weeks. Again, the Saints, not great. They don't have any receivers, and they knocked out Chris Olave on like the first drive of that game. So anybody they're going to throw the ball to was not available for New Orleans, but still.
Brutal
Saints,
injury.
Yeah, brutal. And a good thing is he was able to travel back, and I assume he's played since then. I've not been paying attention to New Orleans. I know they beat Atlanta. I don't know whether he's come back or not. I assume he probably has the last couple of weeks. And then they play the Giants, and that was the last start for Daniel Jones, and they were having some leaks there as they were down. They were up 17-7 and allowed New York to come back there and take that game to overtime. But they got 3 takeaways in that game. And you look at it, they have J.C. Horn, who's been great all season long. He's been healthy for the first time, really, for a full season, knock on wood, in his career. They got back Dane Jackson, who was a big free agent signing for them. Jordan Fuller also came back. So that secondary is as healthy as it's been all season long. And then they get DJ Wonnum, who they signed in free agency before they brought in Clowney. He was the first guy they brought in, hoping to replace a production loss from Brian Burns and even Frankie Louvu when it came to the pass rush. And he really made an impact, especially in that first half. So for me, it's just like they're getting healthier. Murray Barno, a guy that they lost last year to a torn ACL on Christmas Eve, and that lost to the Packers. He had his practice window opened up, and it's all down to just his comfortability and whether he's able to go out there and play on Sundays. So this is a defense that's getting healthier. It's a defense that struggled, but they have a coordinator in Ejiro Evero who got coaching interviews last year and maybe getting again this year. And had he not been held hostage by the owner, David Tepper, he might be the Rams DC or the Packers DC. Yet fans have wanted to fire him all season long, although he's had a mash unit, and his best 2 players outside of J.C. Horn, that being Derek Brown and Shaq Thompson, are out for the season.
Yeah, and I was going to say those are brutal injuries that are really hard to come back from. I mean, you look at the Chiefs offense, talking about losing Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice. I think both those guys were going to be huge cogs in this offense and would make it look completely different. And when you look at the Panthers, if you add Brown and Shaq Thompson to this defense, it's a completely different defense than what it is right now. I mean, the reality is those two are very, very good players at their positions. So those are huge losses. I'm going to be very curious to see how this game goes for Kansas City, because what you saw last week was more 3-and-outs that the Chiefs have ever had, I think, this season. And that is something they can't consistently do and continue to win. One of the things that Kansas City has done consistently is they've run the ball, and they've had long, sustained drives of 10 plays or more. They're near the top of the NFL and having those types of scoring drives. They didn't do that last week, and that is a huge thing that they need to get back to in order to have a chance to continually win. I think that they could be okay this week if they got away from that a little bit again, but they need to continuously they need to be on the field. They need to keep their drives going and just convert. I mean, you don't have to get a first down every play, but get a first down every 2 plays or every 3 plays and continue converting on third down. I think that's a huge key for this Chiefs team. If the Panthers defense can get them to do what the Bills defense did, that's a problem for KC.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, especially on third down. We've become so accustomed to Mahomes just scrambling and picking up a 10-yard gain, and just teams just hitting themselves over the head, being like, why can we not get this guy off the field, just doing that magician kind of stuff. And you look at Carolina this season, they have not been good against the run at all, but they have gotten better the last couple of weeks. Now, they still have given up 100-plus yards on the ground to the Saints and also to the Giants, but they have tackled better. This has not been a great tackling team so far this season. If they can tackle, if Kareem Hunt really is wearing down, and if Pacheco's coming off of that broken leg, if he's rusty, which I would expect he's going to be a little bit, this might be an opportunity for them to maybe still give some yardage, but be able to potentially have some success there defensively. So interesting matchup coming up on Sunday between the Chiefs and the Panthers here in Uptown Charlotte at 1 p.m. Eastern time. What do these teams need to do in order to win on Sunday? We'll give you 3 things for the Chiefs and 3 things for the Panthers here on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Chiefs. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I'd like to shout out my mom and my dad for always supporting me throughout my life. This month is all about gratitude, and along with the people I just shouted out, there's another person we don't get to thank enough. Ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we are trying our best to make sense of everything, and in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers. He is Chris Clark, one of the hosts of Locked On Chiefs. We're talking Panthers and Chiefs on Sunday here in Charlotte. The Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites on the road. Look, last week, it looked like it opened up at 11.5, so the public has at least bet that down to 10.5. We'll see. Maybe it gets down to 9.5 if the Panthers can find a way to shock the world. But looking at this game on Sunday, Kansas City, three things that they must do to win this game. Now, considering how well the Chiefs have played, they maybe only just need one thing, and Patrick Mahomes to be Patrick Mahomes. But you can give me two more things, Chris, that the Chiefs need to do in order to win this game on Sunday and maybe replace that first one, Mahomes being Mahomes.
For the past 3 weeks, they had been pretty good about not turning the ball over. Then last week, they turned the ball over twice. They have to win the turnover battle. They cannot turn the ball over. If they lose the turnover battle, this becomes a game, because you talk about it being a 10.5-point game right now. One turnover, that could easily be a 7-point flop.
Yeah.
It could be 14 if the Chiefs are right on the edge of scoring and then turn the ball over and the Panthers go get a touchdown. So they have to keep control of the ball, and I think that's something that Mahomes has to get better at. He has struggled this season. He's got 11 turnovers, 11 picks. You just cannot continue to do that and continue to play football deep into the playoffs. So that's something they need to get under control over the next couple of months. So take care of the ball and run the ball. If they run the ball and they run the ball well against the Panthers, I think that this is a game that they should be able to win, and it should be a 2-score game, if not a little bit more, because I do think that this offense has the ability to run the ball. And with getting Pacheco back, you have the ability to maybe run it a little bit more than you have in the past. And you're going to have two guys that should be able to get out there and have legs underneath them to be able to run the ball effectively. So I think that those could be two big keys in this game.
Yeah, what's going on, man, with Mahomes? Because I turn on these games and it's just interception. Like, what the hell, man? Like, this is not what we're expecting out of him, as he's leading the league right now in interceptions.
Well, I will. To be fair, the last interception was him just trying to make a play on 4th down. So I throw that one out, and he's had some that are bad plays on his part, but he's also had some.
The first pass play, like on Sunday against Buffalo, is a pick, and like right then and there,
yeah, that's
as a neutral observer, I'm like, they're gonna lose this game, because like we've already known he's had those struggles this year. But when you come out and immediately throw a pick and let that crowd that's already ridiculously lubed up and ready to go let them be even drunker off of that interception, like that's not good stuff.
No, and I mean, it was basically fundamentals. I mean, he tried to throw the ball, and he was moving when he was trying to throw it. Didn't pay attention to his feet. Didn't pay attention to his fundamentals and the way he throws the ball, and it sailed it, and it goes for a pick, and that becomes a Buffalo touchdown, and that completely changed the game. If he doesn't throw that pick to start, I think the Chiefs offense probably goes down the field and scores. They've been generally pretty good about that on their first 15 type plays, going down and scoring early on those drives. So I agree. I think that's a huge issue. But the other reality is that they've had bad luck. I mean, he's had bad plays, but if you go look at, like, if you believe in PFF, PFF has turnover worthy plays. I think I saw something last week where he had maybe 5 turnover worthy plays and he had 9 picks. So at that point, you're sitting there going, okay, he's getting picks on plays that aren't turnover worthy. That tells you how bad the luck is. So at some point, you'd think that luck switches back and goes back in Kansas City's favor, to be even at least a little bit. But it hasn't happened so far this season.
Yeah, and you also wonder if that's attributed to maybe just the guys that have been out so far this season at receiver, and maybe that goes into it. So we'll see if he can cut those down. But looking at Carolina, as far as the 3 out of the probably 90 things they need to do to win this game, I mean, not 90. I'm kidding, obviously. I'm sure someone's like, why are you saying 90? Relax. The 3 things that they need to do. It's a joke, folks. It's football. Number 1. They got to find a way to run the ball. As you're talking about, Kansas City, they're second in the NFL, allowing 3.6 yards per rush attempt. They're third in total yards rushing allowed. Carolina's only 25th in the NFL in rushing, but they're 10th in yards per attempt. And Chuba, as I mentioned earlier, 14th in NFL in rushing yardage, 5th in rushing success rate among running backs with at least 125 attempts. He's been outstanding. Jonathon Brooks, now he adds an element to that run game and also in the pass game as a back out of the backfield trying to catch the ball. So got to run it. Be able to take some pressure off of Bryce Young, and you're just not going to win this game if you cannot control the line of scrimmage. And it's not like Buffalo ran the ball well last week and they only had 104 yards, but when it mattered most, especially with Josh Allen, they got it done. So for Carolina,
the difference is they have Josh Allen. I mean, exactly. No offense to the Panthers, but you don't have Josh Allen, so that changes things a little bit.
Absolutely, and like it's not like Bryce. If Bryce makes that kind of play, then. Wow, hat tip to you. You would have to do the same thing as a Chiefs fan. But no, they're going to have to do it the old school way by lining up and trying to run it down their throat. And Cade Mays could get started once again at center, which has been an interesting development as Brady Christensen was in that role. The Nicky Aquana, who's back this week at left tackle, he was out the last couple of weeks, and Christensen moved to left tackle. And Cade Mays, who was on the Panthers roster last 2 years, they cut him at roster cutdown. He was on a Giants practice squad. They went out there and brought him back to Carolina, and he did a really good job against Dexter Lawrence last 2 weeks ago in that game in Germany. So we'll see what he can do potentially this week against Chris Jones, another high-paid, talented defensive tackle. Second thing I got to do, got to cut it loose, man. Like Bryce Young is last in the NFL in adjusted yards gained per pass attempt at 4.14. And just to add some context to it, the next closest player is Deshaun Watson at 5.12. So that's nearly a full yard more per pass attempt. And Andy Dalton, by the way, hasn't been much better when he's played. He's 33rd out of 36 quarterbacks qualifying according to Pro Football Reference at 5.37. Dave Canales admitted earlier this week that he has not allowed Bryce Young the opportunity to throw the ball down the field as much as maybe he should have, and he's got to do a better job. He's taking accountability, and you're not going to beat the Chiefs by just trying to straight up run the ball if you don't even try to open up the pass game and throw it down the field. And I looked at it. So 4 receivers last week for Buffalo had 20-plus yard receptions. First time it's happened for Kansas City this season that they've allowed that. Panthers, shockingly, twice this year, they've had 4 different receivers have 20-plus yard receptions. That was against the Raiders in their win, and then the blowout loss against Chicago. So they got to cut it loose, open up things offensively to have any sort of chance. And then we talked about this a moment ago. They got to force and take advantage of Patrick Mahomes' mistakes, whether it's been on Mahomes or just bad luck. He's turned the ball over. 11 interceptions this season, but it's only the 9th worst interception percentage in the league. And the opponents have turned 4 of those interceptions into touchdowns and 3 of them into field goals. So last week, Buffalo cashed that into a touchdown. Carolina has to do that if they're going to win this game. They're healthier in the secondary. They got DJ Wonnum back. They have to be able to not just only force turnovers, which they forced 3 of them in that win against the Giants, but they have to turn that into a touchdown. So complimentary football, we talk about it all the time here in Carolina. You do that, you have a chance to win this game on Sunday against Kansas City.
How crazy is it that the NFL has basically shifted in 2 years? Like 2 years ago, if we were talking about this, we're not talking about they have to run the ball and they have to run the ball well. But this year, if you're not running the ball well, you're not probably playing well. The reality is NFL defenses have changed the way they're defending teams, and you have to be able to run the ball. And there are not many offenses that are able to get away from that. Buffalo is one of them that can get away from that and still be okay. But generally speaking, you have to be able to run the ball, and that is just a complete change from what it's been in the NFL the past several years.
Yeah, but we're getting back to basics, in my opinion. Like I've always felt like this is a line of scrimmage game. Sure, you can throw it all over the yard, but if you can't get that yard when you need it, you're down at the goal line, you can't score, it's 3rd and inches, you can't get it, you're not going to be a championship team. And we have seen Kansas City's been able to run the football, even if we've always focused on what Mahomes could do. And we focused on the tackles when, I'm so sorry, man, Mike Rimmer's also single-handedly lost Super Bowl here in 2015. He's now done it twice because that game against Tampa Bay, he also could not block to save his life. And God bless you, having to start him at left tackle. It was bad enough at right tackle, but him at left tackle, we know we focused on that game.
It was brutal.
Yeah, but like we know, like they focused on, oh, well, you got to have the tackles, you got to have the passing game, all that. But man, if you can't run the ball, especially when you get to the playoffs, and Canales came here and talked about that, the team, and he comes from Seattle. And we know with Seahawks, when in their prime, with the Legion of Boom, but really with Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson, they weren't asking him to do a ton. They were saying run the football until, well, they didn't run the football when they should have ran the football against New England, but we won't rehash that here on the show. But still, like that's the basics of football, and I'm actually happy to see it as a guy who loves running game and loves defense and who loves the forward pass. But come on, relax. We need to throw the ball 50 times in this game. So last comments on this game. I don't have a score prediction. You don't have one either, but just any final thoughts just about the Chiefs and the Panthers heading this week as obviously a critical game for Kansas City as you open up the door to the rest of the AFC to come in there and potentially steal that bid or that bye week, that number one seed and that first round bye. There we go.
Yeah, when I look at this game, and it's nothing against the Panthers, but when I look at this game, Kansas City needs to blow the doors off of them. And Panthers can be a good team. I've watched several of their games. They have moments where they look like they could be a good team on offense and on defense. But Kansas City, this is a game that shouldn't be close. And I expect it's going to be close just because that's how Kansas City generally has played this season is they play basically just good enough to win no matter who they're playing. Obviously, that didn't work against Buffalo. But to me, Kansas City needs to come out and they need to blow the doors off of them because they need to show that they can do that. They haven't done it yet really this year. They need to show that they have the ability to come out and score a bunch of points and run away on a team. And this is really going to be probably one of your best opportunities to do it. The Panthers are up. You talked about it later. They got the Raiders coming up. They still have the Browns, the Texans, the Steelers. You're not going to be running away, on those games. You still have the Chargers and the Broncos. You're not going to be running the score up on any of those games, really, I don't think. So need to get the offense going, and it needs to happen this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a can't lose kind of game for Kansas City. And for Carolina, I talked about it earlier this week. This is really about Bryce Young once again. And Canales talked about last Monday after the Giants game, going to that bye week, that they're running the ball the way they want to run the ball. They're protecting like they want to. They just have to get the passing game figured out. And I wondered, would that be him opening the door to go back to Andy Dalton? He continues to say they're evaluating this week to week, and Bryce Young has done the things that have allowed them to continue to put him out there and to build on some of the positive things he's done the last couple of weeks. But when they drafted Bryce Young number one overall, David Tepper, the owner here in Carolina, who's the reason for all the struggles here since he bought the team, he said that Bryce Young gave them the best opportunity among the quarterbacks available in that draft to not just win a Super Bowl, but to win Super Bowls. And here's a news flash for people. If you go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, the team you're going to face is Kansas City. So I want to see what Bryce can do against Kansas City. And I understand it's a Week 12 game. Yeah, the receivers are young, blah, blah, blah. We need to know whether this guy can do it or not. And if he can go out there and if he can spin it around and look more like that Bama Bryce, then that shows you, okay, potentially this could be the guy.
One of the biggest matchups that we haven't even talked about in this game could be Spagnuolo versus Bryce Young. Spagnuolo has eaten young quarterbacks alive at times. And so that is going to be a key in this game is can he get to Bryce Young and can he make him do things that Bryce doesn't think? Can he fool Bryce is really going to be the question. If he can fool him into turning the ball over or making bad decisions, even if it doesn't turn into a turnover, that could be huge in this game as well.
Yeah, I mean, great point. Like, these are not the stakes that you're going to have to overcome and face in the playoffs and potentially in a Super Bowl if they ever get there with Bryce Young. But these are the kind of teams and the kind of coaches and players you're going to have to go up against. You're going to have to overcome if you ever want to hoist Lombardi. So I'm looking at that, especially on Sunday, and likely going to talk more about that on tomorrow's show. But I'm Julian Council, and he is Chris Clark, one of the hosts over at Locked On Chiefs. Follow him on Twitter at Chris Clark NFL. Follow me on Twitter at Julian Council. Thank you again for watching our show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. If you have not subscribed, which I don't know why you're not doing, especially if you're a Chiefs fan. Like, come on, guys. Like, your team wins all the time. You don't want to get some great Chiefs coverage. Do that. Subscribe here. Locked On Panthers as well, even though team doesn't win us that much, but the vibes are good. And maybe they're going to shock the world on Sunday. And, of course, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can check us out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and probably on Sundays, too, live, at least for me, over on YouTube. But we'll be back again on Friday. So tune in for all of that on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Chiefs. Until then, be safe, be happy, be whole, and we'll talk to y'all over on Friday.